The great thing about every recession I've been through is it's forced us to find a new way, and then that turns out to be a best practice forever. We interrupt people. We bother people. They didn't think I was going to call them today. I called them, and I made something happen. I made you rethink whether or not you want to stay at your job. It's gotten so far gone, Vince. The phone is now a novelty item.
Welcome back to Talent Hunters, where we explore insights and trends shaping the global recruiting and staffing industry. Want to build talented teams that drive your company toward big goals and big growth? Then this podcast is for you. And now, let's join the conversation with today's episode of Talent Hunters, brought to you by HireQuest. Connect with us at hirequest.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Vince Holt, the host of Talent Hunters. And today, it is not only my pleasure, but it is my honor to have with us Danny Cahill. Now, Danny has built Hobson Associates into one of the country's premier privately held search firms. But the part that inspires me most about Danny is that in his spare time, he has dedicated himself to helping the entire recruiting world to get motivated and more efficient within their profession. Welcome and thank you, Danny.
Vince, happy to be here. It's been too long, my friend. I'm good to see you.
Oh, great to see you too. Now, 20 years ago, you started According to Danny.
Yeah.
What drove you in this direction all the while you were so successful owning Hobson Associates?
Yeah, great question. And I think there's a lesson to be learned here for people on the call that are trying to find out which niches to go into and predict the future, because there's always a combination of personal reasons and underlying business reasons to do anything. So the personal reasons were really twofold. One, I have an apparently insatiable need for attention. And so, I liked going to conferences, and that's how I met you and being on stage. But when I started it in 2002, remember 2001, after 9/11, people forget that there was a good 3 or 4 months before they figured out the security systems in airlines. And so I was having to check in for flight 6 hours before the flight. And I remember standing in line in Minneapolis and seeing 2,000 people lined up and thinking, there's no way I'm making this plane. And I said, okay, that's it. I'm done being a speaker. That's okay. I had a nice run. I run my search firm and make placements. This was a nice business. And then because I had a few hours to stand in line, I saw a sign on the wall that said University of Phoenix online education. Go to college online. And I remember thinking, you can go to college online now. That's amazing. I wonder if recruiters would take training online. And at the time, there was this thing called WebEx that was new that we were doing with clients. So I was like, I wonder if I did some WebExes and I put some videos online and then I made it a subscription service. By the time I got to the security line and I had to take my shoes off, I had this vision for this whole training company that I started. So it came from a need to say it doesn't work anymore the way it is. And I think that's a good lesson for people. There's so many recruiters, as you know, who are just living in fear because they're like, the things that I used to do don't seem to work anymore. And yet I don't know what does work, right? And they have a need. So now are they going to quit and be haunted by the fact that they failed? Or are they going to be like me in line and say, okay, I like speaking, but I can't do this anymore. So is there another way to speak and still make money doing this? The great thing about every recession I've been through is it's forced us to find a new way. And then that turns out to be a best practice forever. So yeah, that's I think a good lesson for people to learn.
Yeah, I agree with you. Going through some of the downturns that we've experienced over the last 40 years.
Yeah.
It is truly funny how I remember, I think it was Alan Schoenberg said, if you find yourself in a drought, just clear off your desk and grab a candidate and make phone calls. And every time we've gone through a drought, the word that comes to me is simplify your business. Get out of how complicated we have made it because
Yes.
it's still the same business that it's always been.
No question.
So I agree
No
with
question.
that. So Danny, now
Yeah.
you've had your firm over 40 years, very, very successful. You're doing this training coaching. What sets you apart from the other coaches and trainers? What's different about Danny Cahill's presentations?
Well, look, there's some great trainers, right? But it depends on what I'm coaching about. If I'm coaching about managing recruiters, I say this with great respect for the other trainers. Most of the other trainers were pretty good running a desk, and then they figured out it's more fun talking about it than it is doing it. And that's okay for a couple of years. And then you start listening to these trainers, and they've been out of the business for 20 years, and they're saying, back in 2005 when I made this placement, and the average, 25-year-old recruiter listening is going, okay, I was 3 years old when that happened, right? So if I'm talking to managers, I'm like, I am the only guy that meets a payroll every week, right? Like I have to sign checks. So I've done my job if those checks don't bounce. And I'm the one that has to say, should we pay LinkedIn Recruiter, or do we really need that? Or should I buy this CRM or that CRM? And I have to have cash for forecasting. And I have to know what insurance policies I need and which ones I don't. And an awful lot of trainers who just run a business out of their house don't have a clue about that. So I think when it comes to managing, I set myself apart because I made a decision a long time ago. I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be that guy that said, way back in the day, when I used to do this, when I rode to work on a horse and, I didn't want to be that guy. I thought there was something sad about that. Plus, I didn't trust it, to be really honest. I remember having dinner with a very famous trainer who I won't mention. And I said to him, you mind if I ask, how much money do you make? And he said, I made $400,000 last year as a trainer. And I said, okay. And in my mind, I was like, well, I'm never going to shut my search firm because that's about 25% of what I make running my search firm. So speaking has always been sort of extra money for me, which I've always found a way to spend, don't get me wrong. But there just wasn't enough money in it. So it was a combination of my own, avarice and desire to live large. But I also said, by keeping my search firm, it becomes a think tank for the training company. So most people who are on this call who are members of According to Danny know that I have a thing on the website called Hobson Hot Sheet. So literally, and I did it twice today, somebody has a situation, whether we get the deal or not, I run into my studio, I do a video. Here's what happened today. Here's what we're going to try. Stay tuned. I'll let you know if we got it. And there's thousands of 2 and 3 minute videos that are archived and that people can research, and they can say, I wondered if they already had a situation like this, and they can search it and get an answer when they get into that situation. So it's a very organic thing. The search firm feeds the training company. And then the cool part is, because I attract $1 million producers, they often come in here, I mentor them, and then I learn something from them that we steal with their permission, and then we're a better search firm because of it. So it kind of feeds itself, Vince, and part of that was consciously wrought, and part of that was sheer luck, like every other good thing that happens in your life,
Well, I mean, I think it's what gives you kind of an edge is the fact that you're living it every day.
Yeah.
And you're talking to an audience that is dealing with everything your people are dealing with, you as well.
Right.
And so you can address it more directly and challenge them more directly because you do it.
Right.
There's a couple of different things that I want to cover in this thing.
Sure.
The easy one is the greatest distraction we as recruiters have today.
Yeah.
Technology.
Yes.
I mean, we can get so consumed with technology and stay off the telephone and do everything or think technology is the answer. In a Reader's Digest form,
yeah.
Explain to me how you coach your people to deal with technology today on the Monday through Friday daytime.
Yeah, it's been an evolution. It's a great question. You have to be careful, and you would understand this as a, MRI purist. If you were to say to the average recruiter, you know, when I started, I made 150 calls a day, and I didn't have any gatekeepers, and I was on the phone 100, and I went home with a voice like Rod Stewart. And what you're really saying is I was tougher and better than you, and it comes across condescending and kind of anachronistic, and they think you're out of touch. Well, okay, but at the same time that is the danger, the bigger danger is you let them just play with these tools, and then they're not getting results, and then they sort of lose their way, and they sort of forget the essence of the business. So the essence of the business is we interrupt people. We bother people. If they didn't think I was going to call them today, I called them, and I made something happen. I made you rethink whether or not you want to stay at your job, or I made this client rethink whether he wanted to fill his job through his HR team or whether he wants to use me. I interrupted you and made something happen. It is certainly true that if you didn't have multiple platforms in your approach, yes, we're going to do email marketing. Yes, we're going to send out in-mails to people. Yes, we're going to go to trade shows. But, I'm a metrics-driven guy. And year after year, we found, where do we get most of our jobs? From cold call prospecting, with an MPC-driven approach that, MRI invented, 10 years before I was born. So I would abandon that if it stopped working. But when the metrics say it's a thing that works, well, no, okay. So here's what happened, I think, that was sort of the tipping point. In 21 and 22, if you weren't making a lot of money in our business, well, then you were either not paying attention or just grossly incompetent. I mean, with pretty much the same staff I have today, we were 146% of goal in 21 and nearly that in 22. We were making money hand over fist. Recruiters that had never billed more than 300,000 were billing 600,000. And guess what? I had better things to do than to go over to that woman and say, you're really not this good. This is not going to last. I had better things to do, like spend the money I was making. But so what happened was that typical recruiter in 21 and 22 could search for job postings, send a badly crafted email, and by the end of 22, you could get it done through ChatGPT. You didn't even have to write it, saying, "Hi, I saw your posting. I have candidates. Here's my fee agreement. Sign it and send it back." And they'd get it back, and they'd make placements. Well, we had one placement where we didn't actually talk to anybody until the actual offer was made. We called it the immaculate placement here. It was like, we don't even know if these people actually exist. Like, we won't know until we get paid. So it was just a party. It was, amazing. And I knew it wouldn't last. But what I underestimated was the devastating effects of, oh, wait a minute. I was getting a lot of job orders. Now I'm not getting any. And I know what I should do now is pick up the phone and call someone, but I haven't done that in 2 years. I'm scared. And my skill set is rusty. And so what does the average human do? The average human blames the boss, blames that we don't have enough technology, blames their ex-wife, blames anybody but themselves. And, it was an important day for me in late 22 when, and I said, you know what? I think I have a lot of human capital with my people. I think they trust me. I think they know I love them to death and I take a bullet for them. At the same time, there are days when I want to shoot them with a bullet. They know, we've been at it a long time together. And I said, look, I am scared. I don't think this will hold. The center will not hold. We have to go back to making phone calls. And 5 a day is not going to do this, right? We got to go back to 20 or 30 a day. I grant you'll never again have to make 100 calls a day. That's not smart. And I'll still give you these tools where you can send out emails and we can do cadence marketing. We'll do all that. But you got to give me some cold calling to people, because at the end of the day, companies want to hire the best people. The best people are not looking. And if we're going to do exactly the same thing that Talent Act is doing, harvest resumes from people that are open to looking and send them to job descriptions, then why do we deserve $40,000 for our services? And they were not happy. And they said, you never can please this guy. And, we made so much money for him last year, but that's not enough. But I honestly think, not to be dramatic, I think it saved us. We were down 20% in 23, where most people were down 50. And this 24 has been solid. And I think 25 is going to be great. October was our best month of the year. So we've gotten back to understanding, and here's the cool part, right? It's gotten so far gone, Vince, that the phone is now a novelty item. So where you used to get, maybe 10% response on phones, we're getting 25% response on phones because nobody calls these people. I had a VP of HR say to me a couple months ago, he said, "What happened to you people?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I honestly couldn't get any work done in the old days. Like I'd get 10 calls a morning from search firms trying to get my business." And I said, "Oh, yeah, I get that. How many calls do you get now?" And he said, "If I get 5 a month, it's a lot." This is a VP of HR. So few people are making the phone calls that the phone is somehow now a differentiator. This old technology is now a differentiator. It is now a novelty item. It appears to candidates and clients that this must be important. He called me twice. And so our response rate is higher than it's been in years. So it is now starting to tip where now my people are phone first and then the technology mishmash, where we had 2 full years of technology is the answer. I don't even need a phone. And I'll call only once I get somebody in process and I have to close the deal. So I don't think we should, nor will we ever get back to you come in the morning and you pound out, calls until you're blue in the face at 3 p.m. But we reinstated power hours, which for us is 8:30 to 10 o'clock. So 8:30 to 10 o'clock every day in my office. If you're running a 360-degree desk, which most people are, you must. You have to submit this plan to your practice manager. You must make cold BD calls to clients you do not know. You cannot do debriefs. You cannot talk to a candidate. I don't care if you're sending them out on an interview. You should have called them before 8:30. 8:30 to 10 is sacred. And there's been no other shift, and the job orders have gone up. So if that makes me sound like an old school guy, then I take that risk. But the hilarious part to me is, the irony is, it's kind of new school.
You just said something that just kind of slaps me across the face. The difference is people are bragging about still doing power hours.
Yeah.
But my guess would be, and I don't know this for a fact, their power hours are consumed with calling people they know, companies they know.
Yes.
But the magic you just said is 8:30 to 10 o'clock, you call people you don't have a relationship with.
That's right.
And they're like, that's the second time I've heard this in the last couple of weeks, that people have been focusing on the people they don't have relationships and really calling them an abundance of times, because that's where the new business is, instead of living in your comfort zone.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And what's interesting about it is it's very similar to, when you go back to running and you haven't run in a long time, or you go back to lifting weights and you haven't lifted weights in a long time. If you used to be a runner, you take 10 years off and then you go for a run, you're going to get about 200 feet from your door and get that feeling in your side going, what the hell is this? I can't even run 200 feet anymore. But then the next day you do half a mile, and a week later you're doing a mile, and pretty soon you're doing 5 miles, and you can't believe that it exhausted you to be 200 feet from your house. This is exactly what happens once people start making cold calls to people they don't know. They realize, okay, it's not that hard, it's not that scary, and oh my God, I got a job order. And so you get some positive reinforcement. It has been amazing to me, because I'm not wired this way, how and they hid it from me. And I have to say, this was a failing of me and my managers. When people are established, you think, well, am I stupid to tell them not to call their existing clients because those are people that know them and know their work? But we already know they don't have any business. So they turn into not just useless calls, but they're negative, because now you bitch to each other. Now you whine to each other. And it brings your morale down even more. Whereas if you make 20 cold calls to people you don't know, it brings you back to a sort of a warrior mentality, sort of a, I'm going to go out and fight today. And you don't have to win in order to feel good about yourself.
I love that. I love that. Now, you're tiptoeing around something. We're both tiptoeing around this.
Yeah.
And the one thing that stands out to me is I'm an old dog. You're an old dog.
Yeah.
We know how it was before the fax machine, and that was going to destroy our lives. And then the computers were going to destroy our careers. And now we have AI.
Yeah.
That for everybody in the world, you don't have to be creative anymore. All you got to do is submit something to technology. And the thing that I've discovered about AI is it's not original. It sounds original to you because you're putting it in, and what you're getting back is what other people are doing. How are you dealing with the AI world, both in your practice as well as coaching your followers?
Right. Well, so first of all, at a high level, the fear factor, like you say, I remember it with when LinkedIn and social media came in. Why search firms going to be out of business in 2 years? And it happened when Monster came in. Search firms are going to be out of business in 2 years, right? The internet was supposed to replace us. And here we are, right? And what tends to happen, if you look at history, is these things that are supposed to replace us become tools that we use. I mean, LinkedIn is probably the greatest example. It was supposed to replace us, and then they realized, oh no, these are our customers. And they built a business by having us as customers. And I suspect the same thing will happen with AI recruiting tools. Now, but AI has a bigger thing. I don't think there's any question it has a huge impact. If I were, and I don't want to scare anybody on this call who's in this business, but I'm just using it as an example, and I could be wrong. If I were placing low-level accounting clerks on a temp basis, and I was 37 years old, I'd be nervous. I can certainly see how they can put AI tools together to cut you out and have the candidates talking to a very sophisticated robot who does just as good a job as a recruiter of saying, let's face it, at those low levels, what's your pay rate? What is your skill set? When is your project over? When can you start? Is it really hard to imagine a robot doing that? I don't think so. So if I was in that business, I'd be a little nervous. But the people who study AI will basically say, look, there's basically two different types. There's the generative AI. This is the messaging stuff. It's very good to fire off a submission, right, or a job description. But as I think you were alluding to, it's been out since October of 22, and already I can see a ChatGPT message sent to me a mile away, and I'm not alone in this, am vaguely insulted. It's like, really? You didn't have 30 seconds to write me a note? You've got to send me this, because it's too flowery and it's too stiff, and it feels like somebody just learning the language. So we use ChatGPT for some messaging, for some generative stuff. But I am forever telling everybody it's a good starting point. And then, let it write something that you can then riff off of and make it human. So it's saving us a little time. It's not replacing our time. And that's what I think people are finding all around with AI. It's why it's called AI enhanced and not AI replaced for the most part. I think people are going to be, and have been, extremely disappointed in it. It reminds me of when that human transportation device, the Segway, came out, and they said it was going to change the world as we knew it, and cars would be gone in cities, and company went out of business in 2 years because it turns out, people like taking a subway, and they're not going to drive this thing all around the city. I think AI has been incredibly disappointing, and running a search firm, and obviously I have a vested interest in this, but I truly believe it. Person running an executive search firm, a lawyer, has no concern, because guess what? Your real skills of interpreting someone's behavior, reading someone's emotions, predicting their behavior is extremely hard for humans to do, let alone artificial intelligence. And you're 100% right. Artificial intelligence, and remember, I say this as somebody who's written 3 best-selling books. Yeah, when someone says, I can tell ChatGPT to write me a novel, that's offensive to me as someone who's written novels. But I also have read these things, and they're crap. And they're not very good. And why would they be? Because all they're doing is going to 8 billion novels that are already been written, taking the information and then dispersing it to you in a different way. So by definition, it's not original. By definition, to me, it's really not intelligence. I think I've hired people that have artificial intelligence for 40 years. I think I'd like to find somebody with some real intelligence that I could hire. I do think, though, that in 2027, they say that is the year that artificial intelligence will get to the point where it can code itself. And then I think all bets are off, because who knows what direction that will go in. So I certainly don't want to seem like I can predict that future. I wouldn't believe anybody who said they could. But I would relax for the people that tell me all the time, do you think AI is going to replace us? I honestly don't. And honestly, if I did, I would have sold my firm and got out while the getting's good. But I think we're in for a very long 3 to 8 year run of a really positive economy, and AI will just be a tool in helping us get better. It's not going to replace us.
I love that.
The only thing that could replace us is cloning, right? If they start, if a client says to me, we lost a controller, but we're making one tonight, I think we're all out of business,
Yeah, with just a drop of blood. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
No, that's true. So, you've been doing this over 40 years. I've been doing this over 40 years. We give you an example. My people did exactly what your people did in 21 and 22.
Yeah.
Had their best years ever.
Right.
My people have been with me 20 years. Long time.
Yeah.
Trying to manage senior people
Right.
is a challenge because they know how to be successful. I'm a firm believer, and I repeat this all the time, that successful people are closer to failure than new people.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more successful we are in doing what we do, the more shortcuts we take, the more we think we know the business better than the people we're calling, when in reality, everything we think we know is past history.
Right.
It's not the future.
Right.
So what's your advice to an owner of a mature office like yourself?
Right. Yeah. And to make it definitive for people, of my 27 recruiters, 8 of them have been with me more than 25 years. I have 7 equity partners. So my plane goes down this weekend. They inherit the firm. Whenever I decide to walk away, it's theirs. So these are people that I developed from puppies. And, I bristle when people here say it's like a family here, because it's not, right? I like these people a lot more than I like my family, and I see them more. So we're really not a family, but we're pretty close. So here's what I learned. The best advice I could give to owners in managing senior people is, I thought that the whole purpose of having senior people was it would free me up to be able to train more new people and then build my empire. When in reality, it is the hiring of new people that frees you up to spend your time with the senior people who will never outgrow needing your attention, who will never stop being problem children. They want approval. They want your attention. They want to know you still love them. And they're going to get into problems because they are the most talented, joyful, generous people, but they are just flat out crazy, neurotic, people-pleasing idiots, who make the craziest choices sometimes, and they need daddy, and they'll always need daddy. And when you leave them to train the new people, you're making a mistake. So what I found is, why do you need time to manage new people? They'll do whatever you tell them. They don't know anything. I tell a new person, you should probably have a plan for tomorrow. And they'll go, oh my God, that's brilliant. Yes, a plan for tomorrow. See, that's why I work here, because you're so smart, Whereas, you manage senior people and all they do is roll their eyes at you. All they do is roll their eyes like, oh boy, you're still saying that after all these years. So the beauty of new people is they'll do whatever you want. Spend your time with your senior people.
Boy, communicating with the senior people, how do you maintain that communication in a way that gets them to buy into what you're trying to show them?
Well, I can't give you a specific day, whether it's 4 years in, 6 years in, 15 years in, but at some point you go from being tough guy boss, basically saying it's my way or the highway. I sign your paychecks. To give this some relevance, I was raised by, my mom was super tough. Like, I can vividly remember coming home once and her holding my report card and her saying, your teachers say you have a lot of potential, but we're never going to find out because I'm going to kill you. And I believed her. So that became part of, my mantra. It was like, I'm going to be the tough guy. I'm going to be the one that says, this is how we do this. And you said you were going to do it and you didn't do it. And that pisses me off. And if you don't start doing it, then, there's nobody too big to be thrown out of here. That works for a very long time. But then it morphs into, you're better than this. I'm disappointed in you. You should be disappointed in you. Like, why did you stop doing the things that made you who you are? That's the kind of conversations I have. I don't kick anybody's butt here anymore who's been here more than 10 years. Here's what I found about really good people. Vince, I'm sure you know this. You can't say anything to a top producer who's been at this 10 years or more anywhere near as tough or as mean as what they're saying to themselves when they're failing. They are so devastated in themselves. They're beating themselves up. They need an arm around their shoulder. They don't need any more reminding that they suck. They already know they suck.
Boy, you couldn't have said that anymore. I call it the reflection in the mirror, because you can't lie to the reflection in the mirror.
Exactly.
And
well said.
I mean, I coach people, friends, and even relatives that, if you're having troubles and you want to commit to something, go talk to the mirror.
Yeah.
That's the only person you will not lie to. And if you do, you got a bigger problem.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, that's profound. How much longer are you going to do this, Danny?
As long as it's fun, as long as I'm passionate about it, what I was saying to Joanne before we started this podcast, it's like we have, it's a short month, and every year it gets the December gets shorter, right? It used to be, if you don't have your send outs out by December 15th, it's going to push to January. And then it became, you better have them out by Thanksgiving or it's going to push to January. And now it's like, as soon as you put the scarecrows away for Halloween, everybody's saying, let's push that off till January. So I've always been in a mad rush to get as much build as we can before the end of the year. And right now, as we started this podcast, we have $417,000 in offers out this week. And I'm a wreck. Because if we get all of them, then it's going to be a huge month, and I'm going to cut extra Christmas bonuses. And if we get none of it, then I'm going to not only not cut Christmas bonuses, I'm going to cut people, and that's what you deal with. And yet I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, I don't know anybody else who has this drama, right? If we only get half of it, then I will go into Well, you know what? We're going to have a great January mode because half of this is going to push, and we're going to start with a lot of money in January. And I'm going to be convincing myself and my people of that. If we get it all, we're all going to party so hard at the Christmas party because look at we did in December. And I just don't know people. You know, I belong to this swanky country club to play golf, and I just don't know anybody else at that club who lives with this kind of drama. And I don't want to walk away from it. So to do what? So as long as I still react the way I react to this drama, and I'm not worried about there ever not being drama because it's the recruiting business, then yeah. But you know, look, I'm also very aware that I have partners, and I think part of them really want to know, and I would want to know if I was them too. Can we do this without him? Can we run this on our own? And they deserve to find out. So at some point, I step aside. I'll be a consultant, and you know, they'll wheel me in a wheelchair for Christmas, and I'll be, you know, there'll be spit coming down my mouth, and they'll go, "Oh, who's that old guy in the corner? He started this." You know, that, yeah. But that's okay. That's how it's supposed to work.
I love that. I love that. You know, your just description of the future is so profound. The quote that you made about December, $400,000 in billings or the deals that could close, you're setting yourself up for a comfort zone in January. $400,000 cash is cut. You bill it this month. Yay. You're going to cash it in January. Yay. We don't have to worry. We got lots of money coming in after January 1st. And that's the senior recruiters as well as the junior recruiters. They bill it. They got the yay. They don't even know come February, they've been in a slump. And that's something that I hope our listeners truly pay attention to, because there's no greater excitement than making a placement. It is making a touchdown in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
There is secondary excitement is having that big check come in. And there's usually up to 30 to 45 days for that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you are living in the placement and waiting for the cash to come in and feeling fat, dumb, and happy, you are already knee deep in a slump.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah. You know, that's one of the problems though, Vince, with, you know, now these guys, the top people here, you know, billing $1 million, you know, 700,000 to $1 million is what gets you in the top, you know, 3 to 5 people here. And, you know, it used to be pretty easy to say to somebody, look, I know you got 20 grand coming in, but, you know, you've got that vacation and you said you wanted to buy this thing. So there your 20 grand is. So you got to get to work. Now these people, you know, have $240,000 coming in, 50% of which is theirs. And good luck trying to motivate them, because they're going to come in, but they're going to vacation at their desk until they start to see some of that money go down. And that does get hard to motivate them in that situation. And I haven't figured that out yet. I realize people listening to this will say that's a first world problem to have. But I struggle with it because I don't want them on this roller coaster where you crush it for a couple of months and then you don't bill anything for a couple of months and then you crush it for a couple of months. They'll still bill $1 million, but, you know, energy lost and worry and fears. And why do you do that? If you could stay consistent, which I always was on the desk, it was very hard for me to understand that people would work this way because I was just, you know, raised poor. I was always taught to believe this all could go away tomorrow. So let's make sure we do the basics every single day. I could not sleep well if I didn't have a pipeline. The fact that I closed a deal yesterday meant nothing to me. I was like, that was yesterday. You know, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? I better get working. And I don't see that in a lot of people, but I think that's not because I have greater character than they have. It's that the numbers are bigger, right? And so their cushions are greater. Human nature.
Yeah, the blessing of management recruiters was every month they'd send out the results of the prior month. Yeah. And being a motorcycle racer, you know, I grew up as a competitive idiot. And I mean, I couldn't walk down the sidewalk without walking faster than the person next to me. And they didn't even know we were in a race.
Right.
And so that was my motivation, is I got to see, I wanted to be top in the region, or top in the office, top in the region, top in the country. And it never was about the money. And I think that's the thing. And I know you've touched on this in some of your talks before, because I related to it. And the money is a byproduct of the success of the recruiting world. You can print your own checks in this business.
Right.
The value of this country is the fact that you get to go out here and in recruiting, you get to work your fanny off and you get to be paid what you're worth.
Yeah.
Now,
exactly.
If you make 5 phone calls a day, you're going to be paid what you're worth. If you make 100 phone calls a day, you're likely to be paid what you're worth.
Absolutely. Yeah,
That's what I love about this business.
Yeah. And you'll get, people always say it's the Gen Z people, but I've seen it in all generations. I don't think the Gen Z people are that different, but you'll get people who aren't, working that hard, and they'll say, well, I don't want to be all about money. Like, I don't want to be obsessed with money. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm not obsessed with money because I have it. And in my experience, the people that are obsessed with money are the ones that don't have it. You say you don't want to be measured by money, or you don't care about money, or you want balance in your life. And then you spend all your time worried about money. Can I do this? Can I go there? How much is this going to cost? I can do whatever I want. I don't have to ask what it costs. I just have to ask myself, do I want to do it? And I earned that. Nobody gave it to me. So, I push back when people say, I don't want to be all about money. Well, the people with money are not all about money. The people with money don't think about money at all. The real value of money to me has always been, it's how adults keep score. I was trying to attract the very best recruiters that I could. So at our last building, I had a parking spot right in front of the front door. And I made sure that I had a very high-end Mercedes-Benz or Porsche sports car, because I wanted them to go, whose car is that? That's the owner's, the guy you're meeting with. Okay, well, then there's got to be something to this business, right? If I've got a 15-year-old car with a screwdriver for a gear shift out front, then they're not going to buy into the dream. But I swear to you, if I didn't have that parking spot, I wouldn't have owned those cars. I don't care about cars. I have a paid for house and a paid for car, and screw you, money in the bank. Like, I don't care about those things. But if you care about them and I'm trying to attract you, then I'm going to get them.
I love that.
Yeah.
Danny, I got to tell you, I could talk to you for hours and hours.
You as well, my friend.
You're such an inspiration. You really are. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast. And I hope we can do it again sometime, because you are an inspiration to millions of us out there. And look, you're doing exactly what we profess to do. You're not just talking the game. You're doing the game. Thank you for everything you bring.
From you, that means a lot. Thanks, Vince.